Hello, everybody. We are going to be looking at a map of the West today. I couldn't really figure out a way to do this other than to do a video. I tried to make it to where we could do an interactive map, but I think this is going to be the easiest way to do this. Um, so we're going to be watching this during your class time, and at a few points we will probably stop and ask a couple of questions. But I have a map here, and I will use this map as a reference to you, so you can kind of see what we're talking about. But the sheet that is up here is the directions, and we will be going through this, and you would be doing your own map if we were in class. So the first thing it says is that we are going to label the Mississippi River. I would probably have you label all of the states, just because I feel like you need to know where the states are. But we're going to bypass that, and I'm going to draw in the Mississippi River, so you can see where it's at. The Mississippi River actually comes through and is a very short border on Kentucky, and is going to run out into the Gulf of Mexico. So here you can see where the Mississippi River is at. Its origin is up in Minnesota, and it's going to run down and basically be a barrier between a lot of your Midwestern states, like Illinois, Iowa, Missouri, Kentucky, Tennessee, Arkansas, um, Mississippi, and running into Louisiana. So you can see the Mississippi River there. Very important river in the United States. So number two, it's asking you to shade in the Great Plains area. So yesterday we talked about a bunch of these groups that are in the West. This Great Plains area, and this is not going to be an exact replication of what the Great Plains or what the West is going to look like, but this is going to give you a general idea of where this would be. It is a pretty big area, um, and I'm going to color it in. But again, we're looking at this as the Great Plains in yellow here. So the Great Plains area, it's a very flat area, okay? And it is a lot of your Midwest or Western region of the United States, and it's basically going to fall between what we're getting ready to look at in a mountain range over here with the Rocky Mountains and the Mississippi River. So the Great Plains kind of fall in between those two places. So the Rocky Mountains is a brown region, and these Rocky Mountains are going to at times cross into, because you do have the Rockies in the state of Colorado. It does cover a lot of different areas, and they are actually going to run down some, but you can see, again, not an exact science, but you get an idea of where the Rocky Mountains are here in the United States. And this area right here is where your Rocky Mountains are. And so some of the facts that are on here that you can see is, like, you talk about the Great Plains. They're very large, flat grounds. It's a dry area. They get less than 4 inches of rain a year. There are times in Kentucky where we get 4 inches of rain in like 2 days, and they don't get 4 inches of rain a year. So we talked about them building their homes. They're out of sod because there's no trees. There's not enough rain for trees to grow. The settlers did not want to stop here because a lot of times they were afraid of Indians, afraid of Indian attacks, afraid of buffaloes, and it became problematic for settlers there, but they didn't have anywhere else to go. So basically, that's where they start to settle. The Rocky Mountain region, again, they are just to the left of the Great Plains area. The Rockies are jagged mountains. They're newer than the Appalachian Mountains, which run on the eastern part of Kentucky, actually. on the East Coast. And the Rockies are a high mountain range. In the video that you're going to watch, they're going to talk about the Sierra Nevadas. These mountain ranges are going to be predicted to actually rival the Rocky Mountains in the future. Weather has to go over the mountains, and what happens is a lot of this moisture gets caught up in the mountains, and then it's thrown into the Great Plains. So in the winter, you get heavy snows. In the spring, you get lots of storms and tornadoes and tornadic activity in this area. So settlers, not knowing what they're getting themselves into, it's a very high and low temperature gauge and was very problematic because they had never seen anything like it. The Rocky Mountains are very rainy and snowy. And as you get higher, obviously, that is going to be more the case. So we talked about the Rocky Mountains just so you can understand the Transcontinental Railroad. We talked about railroad workers and owners yesterday, and these particular groups were, let's just say, against each other in the fact that the owners needed the workers to get the tracks laid. And immigrant workers, Chinese and Irish immigrants, were the best ones that they could find. That would just work and work and work and work. So when you watch your video on this particular area, it is going to look at how dangerous this work was. Transcontinental, it's that way because it's going to go across the continent. And in all actuality, what we are going to look like, you're going to have two railroad companies that are going to be building. One is the Central Pacific, and the other is the Union Pacific Railroad. One is going to start on in the east, and another is going to start in the west. So very dangerous work. Again, Chinese and Irish are working here. So what does this look like? I do not have a black marker. So, do I have anything over here? Of course not. I am going to use red because I don't think I use red in anything instead of black because for some reason I didn't grab a black one. So we're going to label the cities of Sacramento and Omaha. So Omaha, we're going to mark in red. Omaha is in Nebraska and is right on the border of Ohio. First mark I did is not right. But you can see right here on the edge of the Great Plains, this is where Omaha is in Nebraska. And Sacramento, which is actually, for those of you that don't know, is the capital of California. And you are going to see Sacramento in basically right in this area here in kind of the northern third of California. So what happens, these two groups start, and you're going to get a transcontinental railroad that is going to run through the mountains, which is going to be very difficult to do. And again, this is not an exact science as to how this is going to look. But the two groups are going to meet in one particular spot, and they are going to drive a stake into the Golden Spike into a spot in Utah. And when these two come together, these two companies, as one builds east and one builds west, they come together. And again, in Utah, they are going to meet. And here you go. So you've got one group that is starting in California, moving eastward. And then you have another group that's over here that is starting and moving westward. Again, dangerous work. We talked about these workers yesterday, and there's a lot that they had going on. Another group that we talked about yesterday is Native Americans, and eventually the state of Oklahoma is pretty much turned into land of reservation. So I'm going to take Oklahoma, and I am going to color it orange. And it's going to be kind of hard to tell probably on the camera, but Oklahoma looks like a finger, looks like a hand that's pointing a finger towards the western part of the United States, which is right here. So a lot of this land was set aside as reservations. The settlers killed almost all the buffalo, as you'll see on this video, and it's amazing how quick they do it, because all they're using is the meat. A lot of times, maybe they'll use the hide, but it was very depressing for Native American groups because they were not using the entire buffalo. There is an epidemic, and when I say an epidemic of grasshoppers, they are grasshoppers, locusts, just a bunch of different animals. Insects specifically, that they are so thick that they get on the tracks of the railroads, and the trains can't move. It's crazy, just crazy. The biblical amount of locusts and grasshoppers that are, coming together and just in the way. So, Oklahoma is having some rough times. You do have the reservations that are set aside. So, we do this map. So, we can start to think about some of these groups that we talked about yesterday, especially the hardships that were faced. So, like African Americans are still coming into the the Midwest and the western part of the United States, trying to escape discrimination, trying to own their own land. A lot of African Americans actually become cowboys, which stereotypically you don't think about. But the truth of the matter is there was a large percentage of cowboys that were both Mexican and African American. A lot of these groups that we looked at yesterday, they're escape groups. Like they are trying to start over from settlers to African Americans. The Native Americans are a group that are just getting pushed off their land. And there's nothing that's fair about it. There's nothing fair in American history looking at what happens with Native Americans. They are a byproduct of expansion by, the United States. And it's a very unfortunate story, but one that has to be looked at and cared about in American history. So, again, this is a map that we would have done in class to give you a better understanding, geographically speaking, of what is happening. But I do want to point out that the eastern part of the United States, so whether you're talking about Chicago, New York, Philadelphia, New York City, Boston, and I'm going to make this, and I want to this purple area here. So all this stuff that we were talking about last week from it's like I'm a meteorologist and I can't find where I'm at. Here we go. So you're talking about a lot of area here that population growth is very heavy because of immigration that's coming into the United States. But these two things are transpiring at the same time. So immigration here, urbanization, population growth, and then you have a lot of groups that are moving from here and coming into this area here to be miners, to be settlers trying to start over. A lot of groups like African Americans that are coming and trying to start over. So there's a lot that's happening here. I wanted to make this video because I wanted to put it out there for those that can't be in class today. I hope you enjoyed it. And at this point, we're going to stop the video and take some questions. Again, this is your map of the West. And if you have any questions at this time, we will be taking them.